Hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Kitabi Qisse. Now, today I have with me someone I've been running behind for a while, which is very good because there are some authors that you pick up at some point in your life and you're like, this is an incredible book. I wonder who is the person behind it, and it gives you that curiosity. And you see on your screens Meera Sriram, and I read her book Gift for Amma a long while back before I was doing this work and in the local library. And I was like, finally, someone wrote something that I can relate with. I'm so happy to have you here, Meera. Before I go further, why don't you tell us who you are? What do you do? Give us a little snippet of who we are meeting today.
Hi everyone, my name is Meera Sriram and I'm a children's writer. Before we get started, I do want to thank Peerbagh and Upasana especially for reaching out to me, and I'm sorry the waiting was long and hard. Just that our schedules do not overlap. It was a crazy year for me last year. Anyway, we are here now, and I couldn't be any more excited. And I truly want to appreciate the mission, the philosophy, the intentions behind what Peerbagh is doing. I've been reading up on them. Upasana and I have been talking a little bit about their work, and it was a joy to know the kind of commitment and passion that they're bringing to their work. So, thank you for having me here today. It's an honor, and I'm excited for our conversation. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in India. I grew up in Chennai, a city in southern India, and I immigrated to the United States as an adult in my early 20s. I used to be an electrical engineer. And the reason that I say that is because I'm not one of those people who was like a voracious reader as a child and I went around carrying a book everywhere, or that I was journaling every day and dreaming about becoming a writer. Nope, none of that. Sorry to disappoint you. I was an electrical engineer designing chips in the Silicon Valley here in the Bay Area in California. And then I became a mother, and I started taking my firstborn to the library. And that was a transformative moment in my life, as in we started reading picture books. And growing up in India, I had no exposure to picture books. I had not read a picture book back then. And reading the board books and the picture books here at the library opened a new world for me. I fell in love with the art, the aesthetics, the themes, the powerful themes. So, from like potty training to first day of kindergarten to taking a long flight, we turned to books in our family, and I was just blown away by the power of the medium. And eventually we started reading a lot of picture books. We would bring back stacks and stacks of books. We read about dinosaurs and unicorns and fairies and dogs and cats, and it was all wonderful until I started noticing something. I started realizing that we weren't really seeing kids that look like my own kids in the pages of the books that we were reading. We weren't seeing families like ourselves, especially immigrant experiences or kids growing up across two or multiple identities or cultures. None of these stories were there in the books that we were bringing back home. And that started to bother me and nag me and eventually consume me so much that I decided I wanted to tell our stories for my own kids, for kids like my own, for the next generation, and so on. And that is when I decided to quit my job as an electrical engineer and start this creative journey that has brought me here to where I am. So that's sort
That,
of my backstory.
that's so interesting. I also studied electronics very much, very close to what you studied, but I think I was that kid who was reading constantly at home, who had books all around and had like notes on notes. But I just somehow never saw myself as a writer, primarily because I think in India, when I was growing up at least, there was this notion that, that's a hobby and that's not your job. And it's a tough job, to be honest. Like, it's hard to be a creative and be successful. Very few creatives are successful, I guess, and that probably is what was driving that notion. But the idea of, even if it doesn't become your job, the idea of creating itself is so powerful and helpful for a child, which I think, we would do well as a community if we somehow told our children that it's okay to share their stories. And some of it they learn from authors like you. When they read something, they're like, oh, this sounds like me, and so I can share my story as well. But what spoke to me as you were sharing this was this whole parenting moment, which is what I also experienced. Because when you become a parent, suddenly there's a lot of responsibility. There's fun, but there's also a lot of responsibility of this pressure of raising the child the right way, or addressing their specific needs. Now, when children grow up in between two different cultures, like immigrant children do, what should a parent do? Like, books is a great gateway, and I'm glad that there are newer books coming which speak to their experiences directly. But what did you do different, or what would you recommend parents do to create that sense of belonging in their children?
I'm not big on offering advice, so this is just my 2 cents, just sharing from my own experience and my thoughts around this topic. When it comes to sense of belonging, essentially what we're saying is that that emotion or that feeling at home, right? Like the feeling of home, or making a kid feel like they belong, offering them that feeling of feeling at home. And I think when we say that, it starts from within, like ourselves. So just being comfortable with who we are. So in terms of identity is what I'm talking about. And then the next would be their immediate world. So a sense of belonging and the feeling at home when it comes to family, their loved ones, their culture, the practices, how they wake up and go about their life at home, that sort of a thing. And then, stepping out of your home, the context where kids are growing up, and it could be their community, so many different kinds of community, their school community, a place of worship, or their soccer community, whatever it is. And then, of course, the city, the neighborhood, and the spatial community that we're talking about. So the sense of belonging actually starts from within, and the way I see it, it starts from within and it progresses outward into the larger world. And obviously, as parents, as caregivers, it is a great practice to be mindful about this offering of a sense of belonging to our children. And I think it starts from the within part, where we make sure that they are comfortable with who they are. And that's where I think, wearing my author hat, I would say books come in, because we talk about mirrors and windows as books being mirrors and windows, thanks to Rudine Sims Bishop, the professor who gave us the vocabulary. But so when kids see themselves, people like themselves, families like their own, then it really, yes, it makes them feel good, but it also validates their place in the world, that they belong here, that there are people like that look like themselves, and it boosts their self esteem and makes them feel valued. So that is how you sort of reinforce that sense of belonging for who they are or how they look. And then coming to the home and the family, it's about bridges, like building those relationships with love and all of that. And another important piece here is keeping the lines of communication open. So for me, it's a lot of talking about our world. It could be about media, then having those conversations, however uncomfortable or difficult they are, about what's happening in our world, having those talks about why we are doing things a certain way, like if we are wearing a certain type of clothing, or if we are eating a certain type of food, or celebrating a certain holiday, where is that coming from? And that's when you share your family stories and traditions that get passed on from one generation to another. And that also gives that sense of belonging, of like, where is this stemming from? Why am I eating this? Why am I celebrating this? What is the meaning attached to this particular custom? So all of that knowledge and awareness comes from keeping that communication and the conversations going on within the family. And then the larger piece, which is our extended communities and our world outside, I think it comes from modeling the behavior that we want to see in our kids, right? For keeping that in mind, that who we are is what our kids are like watching. So it's a two-way street. When we talk about empathy, yes, we take pride in who we are, how we look, what we do, what we celebrate, our culture, our heritage, but we also extend that respect, make it mutual, keep it mutual. That's where the two-way street comes in. We make sure that everyone around us feels welcomed and included and supported and connected. And when kids see that, I think the lessons just roll in automatically. So that's how I see ways in which we can offer that sense of belonging to the children that we raise.
Yeah, I love that. I love everything about it, but I think, as a parent, it's a hard job to sort of think about context specifically. I'll highlight that as you were saying, because I think sometimes, a lot of the times actually, immigrant parents might have different contexts when they were growing up compared to what their children do. And that's true for me as a parent, so I'll probably speak from my own experience as well. And I might have grown up in an environment and a world where my exposure to stories or culture was very different than what my child has. And sometimes I will struggle with how do you keep that sense of authenticity while also balancing what is their context, or what is my child's context, who is growing up in a whole different environment. And I want to highlight one of your books that does it really well. Like, when I read The Yellow Suitcase, it talks about the story of this girl going to her grandmother's passing. You should read it. Anyone who's hearing this should read this, because I think it's a very hard topic, but explained with two specific things. There's a lot of nuance and in sort of validating what that girl is feeling, but there's also this other layered experience of she's somewhere else and now she has to understand this experience as an outsider, but while being family. And that is an experience which is very much rooted in the experience of a child growing in a different place and then having to make sense of what is happening. And I think that is why books like these are important, because even if I go ahead and buy like 50 books from India, they don't speak to my child as much as a book that is set in his or her context. Is that what you're hoping your books are doing? What's that like a big motivator when you started, and when you think about stories, are you trying to create that sense of keeping it in this context as much as possible?
Um, yes and no, because yes, my work largely stems from raising kids across cultures, my own life straddling the East and the West, immigrant perspectives, and all of that. So, and it's such a meaningful and purposeful journey for me when I see, like yourself, like you just shared, that even if you pick up books from India, it's not the same because your child's experience is unique, stemming from your own life as an immigrant parent. So my work obviously offers mirrors for children who are caught up between two worlds or two cultures or whatever. But beyond all that, what I try to showcase or tell through my stories is that at the end of the day, we are all more similar than different, um, regardless of how we look or what we speak or what we wear. Yes, you might eat a certain way, I might eat a certain way, but one is not superior than the other. One is not inferior than the other. It's just like two different ways. And if we did not have that variety, then we would just be a a boring, like, it'll be a bland and a boring world. So it's about celebrating those differences, shedding like a positive light on that rich diversity that keeps our world going and interesting and meaningful. So going back to your the yellow suitcase, yes, it is a girl. Her name is Asha, which is a very popular South Asian name. She lives in California and she's traveling to India to attend her grandmother's passing. You would see spreads where there are like where you see the funeral happening, which is, of course, it's very obvious that those are Indian customs. She's missing her grandma who in India. So you see a lot of the scenes being set in India. The story is happening in India. So, and you see the struggle as an immigrant family is going through that, traveling all this from one continent to another to attend a funeral that the children are not familiar with. But at the same time, it is a grief story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all these stages of grief that the main character is going through, from like denial to anger to bargain to acceptance to hope, all of that is common to us as a humanity. So our emotions are universal, are fundamental human experiences, that we eat and that we sleep and that we work, we live as a family unit, or we play together and enjoy the things that we enjoy. These are fundamental human experiences that are common across the world, regardless of culture and heritage and or faith and all of that. So that is what I try to showcase in all my stories. And when we begin to see that and appreciate that, I think we begin to understand each other better. And that empathy, I think, is fundamental for a more peaceful, beautiful world. So even if you take Gift for Amma, yes, the story is set in an open street market in India. You're going to see cattle on the street. The items that are sold at the market are different that we might not see in a farmer's market in the US. But it is also about a little girl trying to pick out a special gift for her mother. So
Mm-hmm.
it's as much a story as that. It's as much a story as it is about colors, or a little girl trying to wander a street market. Like these are, and the confusion that she has in her head, and how she enjoys the colors. These are sentiments that children around the world will enjoy and connect with and relate to. So that is what I want to communicate through my stories, that yes, then it might be insightful when it comes to culture, or maybe the book is taking you to a different place, but it is also trying to show us how we are more similar than different. So that universality in human emotions and fundamental human experiences is what I try to uh, sort of accomplish through my work.
And that works. I think that's why it's relatable, right? I mean, I did not grow up in Chennai, but I still could relate to it. So
Yes.
I think, Richard Linklater says this in his interview. I feel like I like heard it many, many times, where he says the more specific you are, the more
Mm-hmm.
common it becomes, because
Comes.
universality comes out of it. And whether it is I guess Laila Majnu or Romeo and Juliet, it's the same story
It's the
of
same.
love,
Yes.
but
Yes.
the way you share it
The
with
study.
those nuances makes it different and exciting and engaging. So I love
Yes.
that also, because I hope that, when parents or educators look at books, they look at it from a lens of this kind of diversity. Like, we don't need
Mhm.
to be seen only when there is Diwali and Holi and like four
Mhm.
festivals in a year. We also have regular lives. And if our
Right.
stories can talk about our regular lives and have characters who have a different lens or have a different heritage, I guess, but they still have regular lives. And I think showcasing those stories is what truly makes me feel that we are appreciating diverse living and thoughts, which is what I think your books are doing. And so I truly appreciate it as a parent. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you for saying that.
Meera, I mean, I know you've been in the field for a while, so tell me, as a reader, what are some of the interesting projects or some work that is coming from the community that you're really excited by?
It's a very interesting question, because the needle is shifting when it comes to the kind of uh, South Asian stories that are coming out from the industry lately. So that in itself is a huge excitement, to see so many South Asian creators and voices and stories. Couple of things that really like make me feel like a kid, like the inner child in me comes out, is like when I see the variety in artwork, like the kind of illustrators that we can celebrate today from South Asia, and it's just not like South Asians living in the US, but just the diaspora as such, or even creators living in the subcontinent. Um, I feel like, where were all these people? Like, oh my gosh, like, just look at the richness in the art, and we are able to showcase the micro diversity because they, as creators, bring their own storytelling, right? So for instance, even in the book The Spice Box that's coming out and in spring of this year, Sandhya Prabhat, who's the illustrator of that book, who teamed up with me to create it. The first time I looked at the art, I looked at the kitchen, like where the story is sort of like happening, and it just blew my mind, like the nuances and the micro details, the pickle jar, the type of like the utensils in the kitchen, the bottles with this. It was like seeing my mom's kitchen or like my own kitchen or my grandma. Like, where was this? It just brought so much joy. I didn't have to tell her anything, right? And same way, like the micro diversity within India, like the different regional differences are so beautifully showcased in the art that these people are bringing from different parts of the world. The aesthetics, the color palettes, the vibrancy that are so unique to South Asian cultures are just so joyfully dancing in the pages of the books that I've been reading, and that's been the biggest excitement for me to see this kind of artwork. Like it's like finding our own voice, right? Having our own showcase in a museum, in an art gallery, and like that's just shining bright and beautiful. And I love that, the new voice in the aesthetics of the art that we're bringing to picture books. The other thing that's exciting for me is like reading our South Asian stories in so many different categories and formats, so to speak. Yes, there are picture books, but then I got to write like the first board book, my first board book, and I'm thinking one of the earliest board books called India for like toddlers and infants. Like, imagine that, right? Normalizing what you just mentioned, our regular lives, like slice
Mhm.
of life stories and everydayness being centered in books. And there are anthologies coming out. There are just South Asian anthologies, and there are folk tales and retellings coming out from different regions within India. So that to me is very, very exciting because we are telling the world that we are not a monolith. Like, it's not just one way. Like, these are the three holidays we celebrate. This is the food we eat. This is our flag. This is what we wear. Like, it is all that richness and diversity within India that we are now trying to tell through art and through all these categories of like in YA and board book and folk tales and retelling. So these are some of the exciting stuff, that I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to celebrating and reading
I love that
and
idea on
sharing.
art because I think when true, like really interesting art can, elevate the story, or it has its own like a layer to the story, which is just visually appealing. It's great for kids, but I just feel good art just speaks for itself. Like that stands out. There's a few illustrators we interviewed last year, and their work was just so distinct and
Yes.
beautiful. So you can,
Yes.
like, I can look at the book and say, okay, this looks like this person's art because
Mhm.
they just
Mhm.
have their own touch with it,
Right.
which
We are
is
creating that space for them, right? For
correct.
ourselves, for our stories, for our aesthetics. And that is just beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I do love that. And I think, the other thing that you spoke, which we definitely like sharing a lot, and I'm going to repeat a little bit, is that we are not a monolith. I think a lot of people tend to sort of, how can it be the Indian summer if it doesn't have the mango and you are all eating curries?
Hmm.
When there's so much
Right.
diversity in the
Right.
billion
Or the
people.
cobra or the tiger. We are so much more than that. And it's when we
Yes.
celebrate the everydayness that we also go back to that similar yet different, right? With the specificity comes the universality as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I think that's such a great way for. I see some parents who talk to us saying that when they read these books, which are all from different regions or different perspectives, it makes them do a deep dive in their own culture as well.
Mhm.
Because it's not top of mind constantly when you're in
Right.
a regular job to think about, oh, why do we do this? And what is the
Right.
story behind this? And I see people reacting like that at least when we share stories. And I find that fascinating that it encourages people to do that deep dive, whether they are parents or kids,
Right.
which to me is such a beautiful way of living your life. Then when you are, you
Absolutely.
observe these nuances and you learn from them. So I am super excited about the spice box because it's the first thing we ever set up when we move to a new house. At least in my household, the first thing you want to set up is like, Can I make chai and do I have
I'm
spices to
with
make?
you. I'm with you. Yeah, not yeah. The world doesn't go around without my chai in the morning with my spices. So yes, yes,
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have what we have, what we need. I just want to again say thank you for taking time out. I really appreciate all of the beautiful work that you're doing. And, as you create more, and I am raising my own child, he gets exposed to more and more of these wonderful stories. So he doesn't ask me questions. Like I remember wearing a sari once, and it's the first time my son noticed it. And he said, Mama, are your feet lost? Like that was his
Oh,
response to it. Because
wow.
he
Yes,
had
that
never
makes
seen
sense.
it.
Actually, yes.
So I think, just the idea of making them feel that this is okay, mama can wear an outfit like this,
Right,
and where it comes from, or like other people also wear it. So I guess that
right.
creating that sense of normalcy, or just validating that this is okay, is what happens when we read books like these with great art and great stories. So keep on doing what you're doing. We love it, and thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share the purpose of my work and the joy of creating. And thank you for your important work as well. We are all in this together. So